Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, where we have our first look. Actually, it's our second look at the new fusion. If you're wondering what happened, I did upload this video earlier, but there was a bug with my mic. Sometimes happens where I just need to plug it out and in again, because there was no sound on that video. Feels bad. Puppy's playtime was cut short. Probably Puppy's fault I didn't have time to check the video and make sure it worked in the first place. Let me blame a poor 12-week-old puppy for my failings. That seems fair. But Puppy playtime was cut short and we're back. We're back to actually take a look at this champion. The next fusion. It is going to be a fragment fusion, guys. Jetni the Giant. She's a legendary attack-based champion, barbarian faction, and spirit affinity. And we predicted it correctly. We did. We predicted that she would be revealed today and that her fusion would go live this day next week. That's the 11th of May. Guess what? That's exactly what it is. This fusion will begin on the 11th of May. That is Thursday. And yeah, you can check out the last few videos I've done on the channel if you want to see more info on that. So things like how to prepare for the fusion, what to expect. So, I mean, in short, we're pretty much going to have a summon rush straight away. So be prepared for a summon rush for her that first weekend. Then it should be 2x Ancients after that. But you can see more in those videos. Look, Jetni the Giant, visually, we go back to this in-game preview. Thank you, Plarium. She looks freaking cool. She got this badass head on her back. I don't know what's up with that, with horns and stuff. Is very cool. I love that she has actual horns coming out of her forehead as well, out of her temples there. And yeah, she's got this really cool like tattoo and very intense eyes as well. She looks freaking awesome, super badass. Yeah, I love her design. It's really, really cool. The only thing I don't love is the dual wield weapons. It's kind of dumb. I know, like, we love that in fantasy games, but it's kind of dumb. But it does really make sense with their kit, to be fair to them. So I guess I can't complain too much. I'm just being pernickety for no good reason. But Jetni the Giant, let's take a look at her toolkit then and see what she's all about. Splinter Steel, her A1. Attack one enemy 2 times. First hit has a 30 bucking to 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. And the second hit has a 30 bucking to 50% chance of decreased defense for 2 turns. It's actually a really, really good A1, having both stun and decreased defense. It would be better if it was the other way around, but hey, it is what it is. That's okay. But that is super powerful, actually. Very strong A1. Barrier Breach, her A2, 4-turn booking to a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, ignoring 20% of each target's defense. Now, that is actually pretty exciting. Typically, champions that have ignore defense in their kit are the champions that hit hardest in this game, right? Because one of the big things you do to try to survive is you build defense in your champions, or you run increased defense, and this enables them to ignore a good chunk of it, and it stacks very, very well with Savage gear, Lethal gear, Cruel gear, with the Helm Smasher Mastery, right? All of this stuff stacks up and really makes a big difference. I guess for PvE content now, some of it anyway, things like Hydra, you can also, and dungeons, you can get Ignore Defense for a lot of those dungeons through the new area bonuses of the Great Hall, and that stuff all stacks really well. The more that you have of Ignore Defense, the stronger it becomes, really. This also has a 75 bucking to 100% chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns, and the debuff cannot be resisted if Alsgore Crimson Horn is on the same team. We'll talk more about this potential combo later. As of right now, he's a legendary because he's in the legendary color here. But we don't know anything about this champion, his faction, whether he's a regular legendary or a void legendary. We don't know anything about him. Obviously, we don't know anything about his kit either. But we'll talk about this because it's a pretty big deal for how good Jetni is going to be as well. Either way, look, a 100% chance when booked of AoE decreased defense for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown is pretty solid, and I think it's actually pretty strong in the current arena meta as well. She's really designed for arena. Look, champions who are running polymorph, they're going to have at least some resistance. They're probably not going to have a ton in the current arena meta, but I can tell you, for example, like my Elva, my Pythion, right, these tanky reviver type champions, they're probably running about 350 resistance. So they're going to resist her even if she's running like 200 accuracy, and that's pretty endgame stuff, right? Whereas my damage dealers are going to get the decreased defense on. That's actually quite intriguing. It gives you a way to debuff, and same thing with her A1, to actually get these good debuffs out on their damage dealers. But yeah, not run the risk of polymorph as much, because she's clearly a nuker. She's clearly a damage dealer. You're not going to intentionally build really any accuracy on her. Might pick up a bit on her necklace, might pick up a couple of accuracy substats here or there. You've got your Great Hall, but that's probably about it. but it should be enough to hit past the resistance of anyone that's not intentionally building a bit of resistance, okay? Towering Might then, another AoE, this is her A3, 5-turn booking to a 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies 2 times. Before attacking, puts 30% increased crit rate and 30% increased crit damage buffs on this champion for 2 turns, and gives an extra turn if she kills an enemy when Alsgor is on the same team. Let's ignore the part with him in there for now. First of all, double hitter AoE, that's actually quite solid. And then giving her these buffs before attacking is nice as well. I guess one issue you're going to run into, it's a pretty big question mark. We don't know how hard she's going to hit on each of these moves, but you have to assume that Barrier Breach with the Ignore defense is the harder hitting nuke. Here's the thing though, to take advantage of increased crit rate here, you kind of want to build her with 70% crit rate, but that means that you cannot open with Barrier Breach. Alternatively, you could open with Barrier Breach, and it is on a shorter cooldown, so it would have a chance to come back quicker. And then you could have to build her with 100% crit rate, because you don't want to miss the crit, and this increased crit rate is wasted. I'm not sure which way to go, to be honest. Like, if Alsgor is there, you've got the potential to blow someone up, and then go in with a second, even harder hitting nuke, potentially. Alternatively, you could just open with this one, and use the extra turn if she kills an enemy, to sort of cycle back to her A2 even faster, right? Open with her A2, turn number 2, you do her A3, and then extra turn into an A1, and then she's almost ready for an A2 again. So there's some interesting things going on there. What would you do? It always feels bad when a champion boosts increased crit rate to not build them to take advantage of it, but I'm not sure with her, and especially because it's a 4-turn, but she only buffs it for 2 turns, so there's going to be a pretty big gap there where you don't have the increased crit rate. Mostly will just affect her A1, but look, it is something to be aware of. Then her passive, Nowhere to Hide. Inflicts 20% more damage against targets under shield and ignores, I'm slightly blocking, will ignore shield buffs if Alsgor Crimson Helm is on the same team. I think the basic part of this is actually quite solid, 20% more damage against targets under shield, especially for an upfront nuker if they're going in bolster set or something like that, which is fairly common these days actually. Big chunk more damage, that's pretty nifty, pretty cool. We do like that. There's plenty of good champions putting out shields like Ultimate Death Knight, Necret, etc. Ignoring shields entirely is even better than that, right? That bolster set suddenly does nothing, and that's going to affect every single one of her moves. That's a pretty big deal. That's actually very strong. I will say in the Spirit Affinity attack-based champions, you do have Yannicka from the clan shop that ignores shield buffs on her A3 without any particular setup. I think she needs to be under Veil, maybe. But she brings that herself on her A2. So she sort of does that on one of her moves, her big AoE nuke, without any setup. So that's something to consider, but that is a very powerful thing to do. And yeah, that's sort of the theme of this champion, I think, a little bit. She becomes a lot stronger if Alsgor Crimsonhorn is on the same team. Ignoring shields is much better. That extra turn is extremely powerful if he is there. Then the irresistible decreased defense can be both a plus and a negative, right? Can be positive and negative because it could get her polymorphed, which is going to be really bad. But it's also going to make sure that you probably very easily start to get kills then, even on these super tanky champions, like a tanky Duchess, tanky Python or something like that. You are going to get the decreased defense on them. Well, maybe not if they've got their block debuffs up or if Python cleanses, you know, but you get the gist. Not too shabby. So yeah, I think, what do you think? How good do you think this fusion is? My initial impression, I think the big question is really, how good is Alsgor Crimsonhorn? And are we actually going to be able to get him, right? If he's a Void Legendary, ooh, then, you know, you might want to grab her just in case you ever get him. If you, out of pure luck someday, you might get him. And that could be crazy. Now, if he's a regular Legendary, there's a better chance that you will pick him up at some point. And if he is strong as well, they could be a very potent duo together. It could actually be quite strong. So that's quite exciting. But if he is bad, we don't know. If he's impossible to get, we don't know. It could be tough. My prediction is they might do something like they did with Oella, right? We had Oella plus Ultin of the Shell over here when they did the Oella fusion, right? They did a champion training tournament after the fusion ended for Ultin of the Shell, so you could pick him up if you wanted. I would not be shocked if they're gonna, you know, if they came along and they did the same thing here. So I'd say sort of prepare for that. Maybe a big Heroes Path event or a champion training tournament with massive investment. You could potentially get Alsgor Crimsonhorn guaranteed from that. I think that's possible. If I was Plarium, that's what I would do. So yeah, we shall see. But I would certainly be watching out for that for sure. But yeah, we'll have a better sense for how good this champion is when we actually get to see this champion. As of right now, I actually don't know when the test server is going to go live or when the embargo on that will lift, and I'm not allowed to tell you. But I can certainly predict now, seeing as I don't even know, so I can't reveal anything because I genuinely don't know. I would guess most likely the test server embargo for this champion and all of the champions will probably lift on Tuesday. So stay tuned on Tuesday. I'll also be doing a CVC stream, I think, on Tuesday. So probably we'll have a CVC stream in the morning, and then you have all the info on these champions and stuff coming out later that evening. That's typically what happens. But you didn't hear it from me, okay? So yeah, that's what I'd watch out for. And we'll see then. Obviously, her damage is going to depend on her multipliers and so on, but I think it's a pretty solid kit. 2 AoE abilities, one on a 3-turn and one on a 4-turn. Solid, actually, utility throughout her kit. People generally don't like these attack-based fusions. They generally don't like them, but I think that this one might be received somewhat positively because she does have decent effects on these moves. I think that her A3 is maybe a little bit awkward to work in, but it's still decent. It's still a double hitter AoE. Ignoring defense is very strong. Her A1 is very good. Good passive. I think she looks solid enough. And depending on Alsgore Crimson Horn, she could be very, very strong. So we'll see how hard she hits, etc. I can tell you for me personally, obviously as a content creator, it's different, right? But I will certainly grab her just on the off chance I ever get Alsgore. Bearing in mind, in live arena, they can ban champions away. So either she or Alsgore will be potentially be banned, but you could then bring in another really overpowered champion if you have them and give them the tricky decision of which overpowered thing to ban. That's always a fun strategy. But yeah, I definitely, for me, I think she's definitely worth grabbing. But that's sort of pending, seeing how hard she hits. Like, if she hits terribly, then not so much. And if Alsgore sucks, then it's not so valuable. But if he's even semi-decent for Arena, I think it could be a worthwhile thing to grab. Especially because of this, right? If Bolster, whenever Bolster or Shield champions are the meta, she could be really, really strong. Really strong. And it kind of would force them almost to ban Alsgore, and then it opens up some cool strategies for you. Or, of course, if they ever do limited tournaments, right, where you say, oh, barbarians only. Having her come in as a barbarian only in like live arena or something like that is actually very powerful. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Jetni. Thank you for watching. I'm looking. Yes, the mic is recording this time. Good. Yeah. Failing as a content creator. It hurts, but there you go. I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.